Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's OnBoard limited release webinar for claimant and insurer attorneys. We are excited to provide you with an overview of what OnBoard is and what upgrades it will bring. Before we begin today's presentation, I would just like to remind everyone to please keep their phone lines muted. To end today's webinar, we will be answering your questions. To submit a question, please use the chat feature and send your questions to all panelists. Following the webinar, we will be emailing all participants with resources, including a recording of this presentation. The purpose of today's webinar is to ensure that attorneys remain updated as we continue to modernize workers' compensation systems. As we will detail later in the presentation, OnBoard Limited Release is the first phase of the board's modernization initiative. Although attorneys will not be active users in the OnBoard Limited Release system, there will be some changes for attorneys once use of the new system begins. I will now pass it over to the board's Communication and Outreach Manager, Pam Barnhart, to begin with today's agenda.
Thank you, Mike. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We'll begin today's presentation with a quick recap of OnBoard and OnBoard Limited Release and the changes it will bring to the claimant attorney audience, including information about PAR status notifications and the process for requesting review by adjudication. I'll walk through the latest attorney FAQs, highlight some project updates and news related to other board initiatives, tell you what's coming up next in the project timeline, and leave plenty of time at the end to answer your questions, along with the board's acting general counsel, Heather McMaster, and project leadership. So let's get started with a brief OnBoard refresher. This multi-year project initially began in the summer of 2019, with the full system being available in 2023. But we identified opportunities to implement some early process improvements and functionality sooner in what we are referring to as OnBoard Limited Release. OnBoard Limited Release is tentatively scheduled for release this summer, followed by phase 2 of the OnBoard project being available in January of 2022, including eClaims EDI 3.1, with the complete OnBoard system being released in 2023. To transition away from paper forms, Limited Release will move the prior authorization request, or PAR process, completely online, streamlining the following request types. MTG confirmation, previously done using the attending doctor's request for optional prior approval and carrier's employer's response, Form MG1. MTG variance, previously done using the attending doctor's request for approval of variance and carrier's response, Form MG2. MTG Special Services includes the 12 Medical Treatment Guidelines, or MTG-related requests, previously done using the attending doctor's request for authorization and carrier's response, Form C4-OFF, and non-MTG treatment costing more than $1,000, previously done using Form C4-OFF. OnBoard Limited Release will include the introduction of a Durable Medical Equipment, or DME, fee schedule that certain types of DME will require. The DME fee schedule will indicate the fee for an item being requested and whether a prior authorization is required. There will also be a PAR for non-MTG treatment costing $1,000 or less and new medication PARs, as OnBoard Limited Release will be replacing the current drug formulary prior authorization request process. Limited Release will also change the way orders of the chair are generated. With few exceptions, orders of the chair will be generated automatically and immediately after the insurer response timeframe ends. This enhancement will greatly reduce the need for claimants and their legal representatives to track status and follow up. All PAR submissions completed in Limited Release will be transferred to the eCase folder for viewing. And here's an example of what a PAR document will look like in the eCase after it's generated in OnBoard Limited Release. This example shows a prior authorization request for a non-MTG less than or equal to $1,000. And you'll see that all information entered and processed by all parties in OnBoard is available on this form, including claim information, healthcare provider information, prior authorization request details, statement of medical necessity, and the provider's attestation. Now that I've shared an overview and the changes limited release will bring to the workers' comp system overall, let's narrow in on specific changes unique to claimant attorneys.
Although claimant attorneys will not be users in the limited release system, they will have an increased ability to receive automatic email notifications and updates on claims for which they are on notice. At the time of an initial PAR submission by the provider, if an attorney or firm is assigned an R number, has an email address in their profile, and is associated or on notice to the claim for which the PAR is filed, they can receive an email alerting them of the initial PAR submission and most subsequent actions, and directing them to review the document in eCase. The chart on your screen outlines which specific email notifications claimant attorneys will receive, including updates for PAR submissions, responses by the insurer or claim administrator, orders of the chair when there is no response from the claim administrator, escalation, and notice of resolution for a PAR. As noted in the chart, claimant attorneys only receive a medication PAR update when it reaches a notice of resolution by the board's medical director's office. Claimant attorneys will not receive updates for the escalation of non-MTGs over $1,000 or notice of resolution of non-MTGs both under and over $1,000. The system does not generate notifications of these PAR statuses. Claimant attorney firms can add or update their email address on the eCase Administrators page of the board's website. Claimant attorney firms can provide an email address that is associated with the firm's ARM number. This is done by the firm's eCase Online Administrator on the eCase Administrators page of the board's website. This single email address for the firm will be used for all PAR status change notifications to the claimant attorney firm and must be in place at the time of the initial PAR submission by the provider.
Adding or updating an email address to receive PAR updates in limited release will be as simple as you see here. The system will provide the current email being used for your firm and give you the option to enter a new or corrected email address for the firm. Email notifications for OnBoard limited release to claimant attorneys will have a subject line comprised of the following: NYSWCBE case, -new, followed by the form ID, WCB case number, and the claimant name. The text in the brackets will be replaced with actual data. So, for example, a subject line for a DME PAR notification for claimant Jane Smith will be NYSWCBE case, -new EC-325-DME : and then followed by the case number G1234567, for example, and then followed by the claimant's name, Jane Smith. Following the same process as today, claimant attorneys will continue to file a request for further action by legal counsel, Form RFA-1LC. The submission of Form RFA-1LC will remain the same as it is currently, either by paper or the electronic form currently on the board website. This form can be submitted for varying circumstances of a PAR decision, which I will outline on the next few slides. Currently, Form RFA-1LC is not used to request review for the PAR type shown here, but the RFA-1LC will be used for these PAR types in OnBoard limited release. In OnBoard limited release, claimant attorneys can submit Form RFA-1LC if a PAR for durable medical equipment, MTG confirmation, MTG variance, MTG special services, or a non-MTG over $1,000 or less than or equal to $1,000 receives a denial for administrative, no jurisdiction, or IME scheduling at any time. If an MTG variance or MTG special services PAR receives a partial grant or denial for medical reasons supported by an IME, a claimant attorney can submit a Form RFA-1LC at any time. Note that if the provider escalates the PAR for Level 3 review before the request for further action is received, there will be no adjudication review. Lastly, when an MTG variance, MTG Special Services, Medication, or DME PAR receives a Level 3 decision conducted by the Medical Director's Office for a medical denial or grant in part, a claimant attorney can submit Form RFA-1LC at any time. Healthcare providers will be able to request a Level 3 Medical Director's Office review for durable medical equipment, MTG confirmation, MTG variance, and MTG special services through OnBoard limited release. If an attorney also submits Form RFA-1LC around the same time as the healthcare provider, the resolution will follow the path of one that is received first. Attorneys will be able to submit Form RFA-1LC after the Medical Director's Office issues a resolution. As I mentioned earlier, we've received a lot of great questions from attorneys. Let's go over some of those now. And just to note, we've created an FAQ document for attorneys that's available on the OnBoard Resources webpage that we're updating regularly. We'll be sharing that URL with you shortly. Let's begin with this one. Who is responsible for notifying the claimant and/or their attorney of a PAR decision? Attorneys will still have access to eCase and will receive an email notification if they are signed up to do so when the insurer responds to all PARs other than medication. As a result, the insured no longer needs to notify the attorney. However, even though the injured worker also has access to eCase and may look up decisions, it is still required that the insured notify the injured worker, even if they are represented. The board will also continue to notify injured workers on all PAR-related board decisions. Is there a prescribed format for insurers to notify injured workers of PAR decisions? No, there is no prescribed format for notifying the injured worker of the payer's PAR decision. Can the insurer file a request for further action in response to a medical director's office resolution on a variance or special services PAR? Yes, only for variance or special service prior authorization requests. What email address do I use to submit a comment or concern about the regulatory changes OnBoard will bring? Such comments or concerns can be submitted to the regulations@wcb.ny.gov mailbox. Will there be samples of the notification emails attorneys will receive? Yes, and we shared a little bit about that earlier, but just for some additional information here on what the email will contain, the body of the email will contain the following data: the WCB case number, the form ID, the requested date, the received date, and the PAR status. Full notification email examples will be distributed and posted to the website prior to use of OnBoard limited release for attorney's reference. If my client is seeing an out-of-state provider, will they have to comply with the same PAR and MTG requirements as New York State providers? Will they have access to OnBoard limited release? Yes. Out-of-state, non-New York State licensed providers, for example in Florida or Virginia, can sign up for the medical portal today and have access to submit drug formulary requests. Once registered with the medical portal, they will have access to OnBoard limited release for the submission and processing of PARs for New York State injured workers. Before we wrap up, I'd like to walk you through a few updates on other board initiatives related to OnBoard and direct you where you can find OnBoard attorney resources on our website. The chair has delayed the implementation of the New York Workers' Compensation Drug Formulary Regulation Amendments, which were scheduled to become effective on June 7, 2021, to now become effective with the launch of OnBoard limited release this summer. See subject number 0461408 for more information, and just a reminder that OnBoard limited release and medication PARs will be replacing the current drug formulary system. The Chair has also delayed the implementation of the DME fee schedule regulation amendments, which were scheduled to also become effective on June 7, 2021, to now become effective with the launch of OnBoard limited release this summer. See subject number 0461408 for more information. And an update about our medical treatment guidelines. An amendment was proposed to incorporate updates to the New York Non-Acute Pain Medical Treatment Guidelines by reference. The notice of proposed rulemaking, published in the April 14, 2021 edition of the State Register, is currently in the comment period. You can find more information in subject number 0461394. There will also be revisions made to mid and low back, neck, shoulder, and knee, and new MTGs will be created for traumatic brain injury and eye disorders. Training modules will be available on our website for both medical and non-medical professionals once the new and revised MTGs are implemented, so stay tuned for an announcement regarding this training once it's available. And last but not least, on the update front, a couple of updated resources are available for you to check out on the resources section of the OnBoard webpage, including a fact sheet highlighting what attorneys need to know and a listing of attorney frequently asked questions. You can also view a history of our recorded presentations and PDF copies of slide decks as well. We encourage you to take a look at these resources and share them with your colleagues. You can view these materials and more by visiting the website on your screen. To stay updated, we encourage you to visit the OnBoard webpage frequently. This is also where you can subscribe to receive OnBoard news straight to your inbox. These communications will not only feature limited release updates, but will be used to share information about the broader OnBoard project as well. So we urge you to sign up today. That concludes today's presentation, and it looks like we have plenty of time to answer your questions. But if you have any questions following this webinar, please email onboard@wcb.ny.gov. I thank you for your participation and interest in OnBoard limited release.